It happened without warning. One moment, everything seemed completely normal. The next second, chaos. The big golden retriever collapsed instantly in front of the vet, his body hitting the ground with a heavy thud. The room froze. Story comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. For a split second, terrifying second, the only sound was the frenetic beeping of the heart monitor. Dr. Carter charged forward, the blood pounding in his ears. This wasn't just another emergency. This seemed different. "Emily, we need help. Now!" he shouted, his voice crisp and urgent. The dog, flopped over on the floor, gasped for air. His fur was wet and matted, his eyes barely open. Any strength he had left was draining fast. The girl, Emily, burst into the room with wide eyes of shock. "What happened?" she gasped. Dr. Carter didn't respond immediately. He knelt beside the dog, putting his hand on his chest, checking for a heartbeat. It was there, but faint, like a whisper, just hanging on. "We've got to stabilize him," Dr. Carter said, his voice steady even amid the chaos around him. "If we don't move quickly, he's not going to survive." The next few moments blurred into a storm of activity. Emily took an oxygen mask, and Dr. Carter hooked up an IV. "Hang in there, pal," he whispered, his gaze locked on the dog. "I know you've still got some fight in you." The dog's breathing grew even fainter, his body quivering slightly. The heart monitor emitted a warning beep, sharp and insistent. Emily nibbled on her lip as her heart raced against her rib cage. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked, struggling to even get the words out. Dr. Carter looked at the monitor, his brow furrowed. "I don't know," he admitted, "but we're not giving up." He leaned closer and lightly stroked the dog's head. "You can be here. You've come this far," he whispered. "Don't stop now." And then something happened. A glimmer of life, tiny, near invisible. The dog's chest descended timidly. For the briefest second, his eyes opened, and they locked on Dr. Carter's. It was the slightest twitch, but it was sufficient. It was hope. "Emily, look," Dr. Carter said with shock in his voice. "He's still fighting," Emily gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. "I thought we lost him," she said. Dr. Carter's face softened. "Not yet," he said. "Not if we have anything to say about it." He fumbled with the oxygen mask, his hands steady, his heart pounding with fresh urgency. "You're not finished, buddy," he said softly. "We're just getting started." The tension in the room diffused, if only a little. The worst is not over, but for the first time, there's a glimmer of what they haven't felt: hope. Sometimes survival begins with the tiniest flame of life. At times, that spark is all you need to carry on. They say the difference between life and death can be paper thin. One minute you're clinging on. One moment you're slipping away. For Buddy, breathing was a struggle, a battle he refused to lose. Dr. Carter bent over Buddy, hands steady, heart pumping. His years of experience had trained him how to remain calm under pressure. But this was different. "Come on, pal," he said, tightening the oxygen mask. "You've made it this far. Don't stop now." Emily stayed close, eyes trained on the dog. She could tell Buddy was fighting hard, but she also knew they were losing time. "Is there something else we can do?" she asked, her voice strained with concern. Dr. Carter didn't hesitate. "We're not going to give up," he said bluntly. "We will do everything we have." He grabbed a syringe, drew medication to help an ailing Buddy's struggling heart. He had perfected the procedure, and as he injected, he kept his eyes on the screen. Seconds felt like hours. The monitor beeped and beeped, the sound carrying the weight of risk with each breath. Then, a change. The heartbeat that had been stuttering became strong, not by much, but just enough for Dr. Carter to take notice. "There's your hope," he said, his voice tinged with hesitant hope. "He's responding." Emily's breath hitched in her throat. "Really?" "He's coming back." Dr. Carter nodded and cracked a small smile. "It's not over yet," he said, "but this is a good sign." Buddy's eyes fluttered open again for a second. His look was weak but fixed, homing in on Dr. Carter with a gentle demand. It was a look that said, "Hey, I'm still here. Don't give up on me." "We've got you," Emily whispered, petting Buddy's head softly. "I just don't like to be sad," Rory said, his eyes widening, before continuing with her hand on his, the warmth of her touch soothing him like he was a baby. His breathing steadied a bit, his body relaxed a little. For the first time, the tenseness in the room started to lift. Dr. Carter leaned back and wiped his brow. "He's got a long road ahead of him," he said, "but if anyone can beat this, it's him." Emily nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "We're going to be with him every step of the way." He didn't walk out, because every breath he took reminded him he wasn't done yet. And neither were they. Dr. Carter draped a blanket over Buddy, his tone of voice soothing and calm. "Rest, Buddy. You've earned it." As Buddy closed his eyes, a tranquil calm flooded the room. He still wasn't out of danger, but for the first time survival felt like a real possibility. Sometimes hope isn't loud. Sometimes it's a steady pulse in the dark, a reminder of better days ahead. They say the darkest hour is before the dawn. Those times when you feel hope is distant, that's what matters in all of this. And just at the moment you're about to release, life surprises you. Emily enters the room, holding a new cup of coffee. Her eyes are weary, but her resolve is unbowed. "How's he doing?" she says in a low voice, sitting down next to Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter leans back, rubbing his eyes. "He's holding on," he says. "His vitals are stable, but we're not out of the woods by any means." Emily notices Buddy to her right, and her heart aches at the sight of him lying so still. His golden fur reflects light and makes him glow almost ethereally. She leans and rubs his head. "You're better than this," she whispers. "I know you are." As if in reply to her words, Buddy's eyelids flutter. His ears twitch slightly. This movement is a tiny one, but it's enough to make Emily gasp. "Did you see that?" she says, her voice a quiver with excitement. Dr. Carter leans forward, staring at Buddy. "I did," he says, a slowly spreading smile. "That's the first true sign of progress." Buddy's eyes flutter open slightly, turning toward Emily. His breathing stabilizes further, his chest expanding and contracting with new power. For a moment, the room lightens up, adding something it hasn't had for days. Hope. Tears fill Emily's eyes. "Hey, Buddy," she says gently, "you're coming back to us." Now, Dr. Carter checks Buddy's vitals, his movements more assured. "He's stabilizing," he says. "If he continues to do this, we may be able to get him through." Emily nods, brushing away a tear from her cheek. "I never had any doubt about him," she says with a smile. Dr. Carter chuckles. "Well, you believed in him when nobody else did," he says, "and perhaps that made all the difference." Buddy stirs under the blanket, and his body is not so limp anymore, but bit by bit is starting to regain strength. His eyes shut once more, not from exhaustion, but from peace. He's no longer struggling for every breath. He's healing. It's not over yet, but this is the beginning of something else. A chance to rebuild, a chance to live. "Thank you." Emily says, looking up at Dr. Carter, her eyes sparkling with gratefulness. He's going to be okay, she says, as though saying it aloud will make it true. Dr. Carter nods, softening in demeanor. Who better than him to do it, he replies. He is stronger than we ever gave him credit for. It sometimes only takes tiny steps towards the great victory. They say every battle has a turning point, a moment when everything changes, when the tide shifts and hope no longer feels like a distant dream, but something real, something within reach. Dr. Carter steps into the room, glancing at the monitor. The steady rhythm of Buddy's heartbeat fills the air, strong and sure. "How's our fighter this morning?" he asks, his voice lighter than it's been in days. Emily turns to him, her eyes bright. "See for yourself," she says, motioning toward Buddy. Dr. Carter walks over and gently lifts the blanket covering Buddy. To his surprise, Buddy's tail gives a soft thump against the table, a small but unmistakable wag. "Well, look at that," Dr. Carter says, grinning. "That's the first tail wag I've seen from him." Emily gasps, rushing to Buddy's side. "Hey there, Buddy," she says softly, her hand resting on his head. "Are you trying to tell us something?" Buddy's eyes open slowly, and this time there's a spark in them, a flicker of life that had been missing for so long. His gaze moves between Emily and Dr. Carter, calm but determined. It's as if he's saying, "I'm still here, and I'm not giving up." Dr. Carter checks his vitals, nodding in approval. His heart rate is solid. His breathing's almost normal, he says. If he keeps this up, we'll be able to move him off critical watch soon. Emily's eyes well up with tears. "You did it," she whispers, stroking Buddy's fur. "You're really doing it." Buddy lifts his head slightly, a small but powerful gesture. His body may still be weak, but his spirit is unbreakable. Emily chuckles, wiping her tears. "You're not just a fighter, Buddy," she says. "You're a miracle." The worst of the storm had passed. Now it was time to rebuild. Dr. Carter leans against the counter, watching the quiet exchange between Emily and Buddy. "He's got a long road ahead," he says thoughtfully. "But with this kind of progress, I'm starting to believe that anything's possible." Emily nods, her eyes never leaving Buddy. "We'll be with him every step of the way," she says with quiet determination. "He's not doing this alone. Sometimes it's not the biggest victories that matter most. Sometimes it's the smallest signs that remind you how strong you truly are. All journeys start with the same first step. However, sometimes that is the hardest step. It was more than learning to walk again for Buddy. It was to learn to trust his legs, his body, and to think that the worst was finally behind him. "It's okay, Buddy," Emily says softly, kneeling down next to him. "Today, let's do something different." Buddy cocks his head to the side, fixing his gaze on her face. Faintly, his tail wags, the trust between them deepening with each moment that passes. Dr. Carter advances with a small treat in his hand. "We're going to see whether you can stand," he says gently. "Just take your time, no rush." Emily slides her hand beneath Buddy's chest, offering him some support. "You've got this," she says softly, "one step at a time." For a moment, Buddy freezes. His eyes dart around the room, seemingly assessing the risk. His muscles tighten slightly, anticipating the challenge ahead. Then he takes a deep breath and pushes off the ground. So his front legs rise first, shaking but resolute. His back legs trail behind, shaky yet determined. For a few seconds he's up on all fours, his body gently swaying. Emily gasps, eyes wide with joy. "Look at you," she exclaims. "You're standing." Dr. Carter smiles and nods in satisfaction. That's it, Buddy. Keep going. Buddy moves forward a little bit, his paws sinking into the plush blanket. His legs tremble, but with each step, he becomes a little stronger. Emily and Dr. Carter walk beside him, encouraging him quietly. You're doing it, Emily says, her voice full of pride. You're really doing it. After a few steps, Buddy stops, his body shaking with the effort. He lolls out his tongue, his eyes bright with excitement. He's tired, but he's also proud. He's moving solo for the first time in weeks. It isn't merely a physical triumph, it's a promise, a signal that he is not just surviving anymore. He's living. Emily kneels down and envelops him in her arms. You're a champion, Buddy, she says, her voice choked with emotion. There is no stopping you now. Dr. Carter laughs, folding his arms. I told you he had it in him, he says. This dog is not going to give up anytime soon. The past no longer matters. The fear, the pain, the uncertainty. It is all background noise now. We are not looking back. We are concerned about what the future holds, and it's so much brighter than anyone could have dreamed. At times, it's the tiniest wins that generate the greatest impacts. They say the healing process isn't linear. It's messy. It's filled with highs and lows, victory and despair. But if you take one step at a time forward, you'll find your way. Emily kneels next to Buddy, holding his leash loosely. All right, Buddy, she says, her tone soothing but buoyant. This is your big moment. Let's see what you can do. Buddy's ears perk up at her words, his tail wagging hesitantly. His body may be weak still, but his spirit, that's growing stronger by the minute. Dr. Carter stands a few feet away, arms crossed, a look of pride on his face. Easy does it, big fella, he says. No need to rush. Buddy takes a cautious step forward, then another. He takes tentative steps, his paws a little unsure as they touch the ground beneath him. But soon, something shifts. His gait becomes increasingly sure. His body finds its rhythm. Emily walks alongside him, her eyes full of pride. Look at you, she says, laughing softly. You're unstoppable. Buddy stops, his nose twitching in the air, smelling the grass. His eyes light up at the question. Then, without a moment to waste, he begins to trot. Not just walk, but actually run. Dr. Carter laughs, shaking his head incredulously. He's not just walking, he says. He's running. Emily's heart fills with happiness. That's it, Buddy, she calls out. Go for it. Buddy gallops across the yard, his legs strong and graceful. The wind howls around him, his golden coat shining in the sunlight. It is not only a physical breakthrough, it's freedom. For the first time in weeks, the dog isn't just getting by, he's living. He dashes back to Emily with his tongue hanging out and his eyes glimmering. His body is fatigued, but it's a minerally sort of fatigued, the sort that comes from pursuing joy. Emily squats down, hugging her arms around him. You did it, she whispers, her voice thick with emotion. You really did it. Dr. Carter comes to stand with them, putting a hand on Buddy's back. He's got a long way to go, he says thoughtfully. But this is a huge step. Emily nods, not taking her eyes off of Buddy. He's not only just getting stronger, she says, he's coming back to life. It is about moving forward, no matter how slow, no matter how hard. And today, Buddy moved forward in ways never thought possible. So often, the most courageous thing you will do is simply walk into the unknown. They say we heal best when we do it together. That's because sometimes the right friend can make all the difference, providing strength when you need it the most and reminding you that you're not really alone. "Come on, buddy," Emily says with a smile, holding his leash loosely. On the other side of the yard, a small gate opens. Out bounds Max, a black and white terrier mixed with vibrant energy. His tail becomes a blur, and his eyes brighten when he sees Buddy. "This is Max," Emily says. "He's one of our friendliest dogs. I think you'll like him." Max runs over to Buddy, playful but careful. He halts a short distance away, tilting his head as if to ask, "Wanna be friends?" Buddy freezes while his shape tenses. He remembers the streets, how every dog could be a potential threat, how trust was a commodity to be earned slowly, if at all. But Max doesn't push. His tail wags as he patiently waits, allowing Buddy to take his time. From afar, Dr. Carter watches with arms crossed and a thoughtful expression. "Let's see how this plays out," he says gently. "What if this is exactly what Buddy needs?" Buddy takes a step forward slowly, then another. His nostrils flare out, his nose wagging around Max. Max responds with a tiny bark, a peppy sound that says, "It's fine, I'm here to help." And suddenly, something changes. Buddy's tail wags once. Again, only stronger this round. Emily lets out a sharp breath excitedly. "Look at that," she says. "He's opening up." Max darts off in a playful circle, looking back at Buddy as if to challenge him to keep up. Buddy hesitates for a moment. He runs after Max, quicker than he ever knew he could, his heart flying. "That's it, Buddy," Emily yells, laughing as the two dogs tear across the lawn. Dr. Carter smiles, shaking his head as if in disbelief. "I've never seen him operate like that," he says. "He's really finding himself." The two dogs trot happily next to one another, bodies weaving through the grass in sigh-inducing synchrony. Max barks excitedly, and Buddy responds with a little bark, the first one anyone had ever heard from him. It's a bark of pure joy. They pause at the fence, happy panting. Max gently nudges Buddy with his nose as a sign of friendship. Buddy replies by laying his head gently on Max's back for a moment, a silent thanks, an assurance of trust. Emily brushes a tear from her cheek, her heart swelling with pride. "Now you have a friend, Buddy," Miss Gary reassures him gently. "And I think this is only the beginning." Dr. Carter nods in agreement. "Friendship can heal in ways that medicine never could," he says. "And I feel like these two will really help each other more than we ever could." At times, the most healing does not come through medicine or treatment. It comes from discovering someone to whom you feel that you belong. Sometimes, the best journeys are the ones you don't need to make by yourself. The old saying is that you grow outside your comfort zone. When you go beyond your limits and find out strength you never knew existed. Today was that day for Buddy, the day his world became a little bigger. Emily grips Buddy's leash, a combination of excitement and caution in her eyes. "Okay, Buddy," she says, smiling. "Today, we're going to take you for your first real walk outside the clinic." Dr. Carter follows her, putting on his sunglasses. "We'll just go slow," he said, patting Buddy on the back. "But I have a feeling he's ready." Buddy's ears perk at the sound of their voices. His eyes scan the open road ahead, and curiosity flickers in his face, his tail wagging in steady expectation. As Emily opens the gate, Buddy walks onto the dirt path outside the clinic, likely for the first time in weeks. His paws sink into the soft earth, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass. It's a new world, big, open, pregnant with possibility. "We can take it one step at a time," Emily says, her voice calm but encouraging. At first, Buddy crept cautiously, his steps slow and careful. Max trots beside him in quiet solidarity, But soon, something changes. His steps become faster, his stride more confident. His body flows as though it's made for this, that this is easy. Look at him. A little grin. Go. Emily chuckles, feeling a sense of pride swell in her heart. He's unstoppable. Buddy starts to speed up, his legs taking him down the path. The wind roars around him, and for a second, it feels like he's flying. He doesn't just walk anymore. He is running, free, fearless, alive. Yay! Barks Max, and he runs after Buddy. They run down the path with their bodies in sync, wide and open, with nothing but possibility. Behind, Emily and Dr. Carter walk at a steady distance, eyes ever on the spectacle unfolding. I've never seen him this way, Emily says softly. He's not merely getting better, he's thriving. Buddy slows to a trot, panting steadily. He halts at a small hill, breathing in and out as he surveys the scene. The fields lie ahead of him, the horizon glowing in the afternoon sun. It's the kind of view that makes the world seem infinite. And for the first time, Buddy is unfazed by its size. Emily crouches down next to him, resting a hand on his back. This is like what freedom is like, she whispers, and it's all yours now. Buddy gazes up at her, his eyes steady and calm. He wags his tail gently, as if to show he understands. Once upon a time, the world had been so small, so scary, but not anymore. Now it feels like home. Sometimes, the greatest victories are those you cannot see. They're the ones you feel, deep in your heart. They say life is always going to challenge you, not to break you, but to tell you what you're truly made of. Today would be a test of those skills. Ready, Buddy? Emily calls, her tone even and soothing. Buddy looks at her, his gaze serene but resolute. He wags his tail a beat if he's ready. Dr. Carter comes up and holds a ball in his hand. We're going to find out how far you're going to run today, he says, his voice edged with encouragement. He throws the ball lightly over the field, tracking its landing several yards away. He bolts away after it right away, his legs as springs. But Buddy hesitates. The ball feels as though it's further away than usual. The open space seems a bit larger, a bit more foreboding. Emily kneels beside him, a hand lightly on his back. It's okay, she says softly. You can do this. One step at a time, just like always. Buddy takes a deep breath, contracting his muscles. His gaze shifts between the ball and the open field, and the word go, and then he explodes out of there running. His legs are shaky, his stride uneven at first. It seems like a long way to go, but with each stride, his body recalls what it can do. His stride lengthens, his steps become stronger. Max looks back, barking encouragement. Buddy digs in, his legs pumping with more conviction. The wind blurs by, taking with it all fear, all doubt. He's not simply chasing after a ball, he's running toward freedom. That's it, Buddy! You hear Emily shout with pride in her voice. Dr. Carter looks on smiling widely. He's got it, says Alston, giving an approving nod. He's stronger than ever. Buddy follows the ball, coming to a halt. He crouches down, raising the ball gently with his teeth. His tail starts wagging furiously as he turns back toward Emily, and his eyes shine with excitement. The domain no longer seems foreboding. It feels like home. He runs back to Emily, placing the ball at her feet. His tongue hangs out and his breath comes in steady pants. Emily drops to her knees, pulls him to her. You're amazing, she whispers, tears welling in her eyes. You've gone so far, and this is just the beginning. It was more than a test of strength. It was a test of courage. and Buddy had passed with flying colors. Dr. Carter comes over and places his hand on Buddy's head. "You're a champ, pal," he says, pride swelling his tone. "You've got the heart of a lion." Emily is standing, gripping the ball in her hand. "Let's go back," she smirks. "You've earned a good rest." Some of the biggest battles aren't those that we fight with our body. Those are the ones we defeat with our hearts. They say healing is more than getting better. It's about hearing life anew. Those little moments, the quiet victories, the things you never thought you'd have again. For Buddy, today was one of these moments. Emily comes in with a shopping bag, her face bright with excitement. "Hey, Buddy," she says, raising the bag above her. "I've got some surprise for you." Buddy perks up, his tail wagging slowly. His gaze hones in on the bag. Dr. Carter laughs from the other side of the room. "You spoil him," he says, shaking his head, "but I think he's earned it." Emily drops to the ground beside Buddy and pulls out a vivid blue bandana. She gently wraps it around his neck, steps back, and admires her handiwork. "Look at you," she says, clapping her hands. "You're officially the most handsome dog in the clinic." Buddy wags his tail like a metronome, his body almost vibrating with happiness. "He likes it, I think," Dr. Carter says, smiling. Some clients sitting in the reception room turn to observe the spectacle. One little girl gasps with delight, clutching her mother's hand. "Mommy, look at the doggy," she says, pointing at Buddy. "He's so pretty." Emily waves them over. "Would you like to say hi?" she asks kindly. The small child nods excitedly and slowly approaches the man known as Buddy. She gets down on her knees, the small hand of hers reaching out to touch his pelage. Buddy stands entirely still, eyes serene and soft. "He's so soft," the girl whispers, her eyes wide with wonder. Emily smiles. "Buddy's a very special dog," she says. "He's been through a lot, but he's one of the strongest dogs I've ever seen." The girl gazes up at Emily, solemn. "He's a hero, isn't he?" she asks. Emily's eyes mist over. "Yes," she says softly. "He really is." Dr. Carter notices the interaction from afar, a surge of pride swelling within him. "There are reasons that moments like this," he says, speaking quietly, "are why we do what we do." Buddy leans into the little girl's touch, his body loose and relaxed. For the first time in forever, he's not a patient or a survivor. He's just a dog, cheered and adored for exactly who he is. That even the most profound transformations aren't always physical. They're the moments that show you who you were always destined to be. Emily scratches Buddy's fur one last time before getting to her feet. "Come on, Buddy," she says, smiling. "Let's go for another walk. The world's waiting for you." But sometimes healing isn't the ending of the story. It's the start of something greater. Every great journey must be tested, right? Not to punish you, but just to remind you of how far you've come and how much stronger you've become in the process. Emily guides Buddy into the open field. His steps are unwavering, his eyes shining with confidence. "You're doing fine, Buddy," she tells him with a smile. "Let's stretch it a little bit further today." Dr. Carter lurks behind him, his eyes tracking Buddy's movements. "Just watch him," he says. "Don't allow him to rush you before you're ready." Emily assents. But within her heart of hearts, she knows Buddy can do it. He's been reforged, prepared for something greater. The three of them go a little farther than usual, the path winding through a small grove of trees. The unfamiliar scents register as a shiver passes through Buddy's ears. His tail wags, fresh curiosity lighting up his eyes. Max takes off, barking in excitement, weaving behind a thicket of bushes. But then, a sharp yelp. Emily stops dead, her heart racing. "Max!" somebody calls, her voice tinged with concern. Buddy stiffens, his ears perked straight up. He tugs on the leash purposefully, directing Emily toward the noise. They discover Max ensnared in a shrub of thorny underbrush. His paw is trapped, and he cries faintly, trying to extricate himself. Emily goes down on her knees and carefully unhooks Max's paw. "It's okay, Max," she says gently. "I've got you." Buddy stands by, his body pressed against Max protectively. His gaze is calm but alert, looking out for his best mate like a sentry. Dr. Carter enters seconds later, his expression grave. "Is he hurt?" he asks, kneeling beside them. Emily shakes her head. "Only a scratch," she says, sighing in relief. Dr. Carter gently checks Max's paw and then nods. "He'll be fine," he said, smiling, "but it appears somebody just got their badge as a protector." Next to Buddy, Dr. Carter gazes down at him, eyes unflinching, full of meaning. It's apparent that something has shifted. He's no longer merely a survivor, he's also a leader, a protector, a friend. "You're all so wonderful," Emily says, reaching over to scratch behind Buddy's ear. "You knew exactly what you needed to do." Max pokes Buddy with his paw and wags his tail happily. They stand next to each other now, their friendship only strengthened. Some problems are déjà vu, some squeeze from left field, some catch you by surprise. But they don't come here to break you. They show you how far you've already come. Dr. Carter stands up, brushing off his hands. "Let's go back," he says, looking at Buddy. "You've earned yourself a break today." Emily laughs and reaches out her hand to Buddy. "Come on, hero," she tells him, smiling. "Let's get Max home safe." But sometimes, being a hero is recognizing when someone else should take the stage. They say the road to healing is never a straight line. There's always a step forward, and then those moments where you feel like you're taking two back. Times when doubt sneaks in, telling you that maybe you haven't progressed as much as you thought. For Buddy, this was one of those moments. Emily walks into the room, a bag of treats in tow. "Hey, Buddy," she calls, her voice cheerful but low. "I have a little something for you." Buddy raises his head a little, and he makes eye contact with her. But there's not a spark, just a quiet exhaustion. His tail gives a faint wag, then goes still again. Emily's heart sinks. "You okay?" she says, kneeling next to him. Dr. Carter stands in the doorway, visible concern in his eyes. "He's had a big few days," he says softly. "Sometimes the body just needs some time to catch up." Emily nods, although her concern remains. "He's been so tough," she says. "I hate to see him like this." Dr. Carter approaches and puts a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He's still strong," he says. "This is just a bump in the road. Give him time." Emily pets Buddy's soft fur, her hand gentle and slow. "It's going to be okay," she says in a whisper. "We're not going anywhere." Buddy closes his eyes and his body goes slack beneath her fingertips. It's a quiet surrender, not of defeat, but of trust that he's in safe hands. Dr. Carter looks on thoughtfully as the scene plays out. "You know," he adds quietly, "the best thing you can do sometimes is rest." Emily smiles softly. "I feel like he's earned that," she says. Healing is not always about moving forward. At times it feels like it's about stopping, allowing yourself to breathe, allowing yourself to trust that it's okay to be still. As evening slips into night, the clinic falls quiet. Buddy falls asleep, curling into the warmth of Emily's body. Max curls up next to him, his tiny body tucked protectively up against Buddy's side. They lie together, two friends, two fighters, two souls who won't quit. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is give yourself permission to rest. It is said that after every black night, the light of dawn emerges. The light always returns, no matter how deep the shadows. For Buddy, today was that day. A moment of renewal. A subtle reminder that the battle was not finished. Emily walks into the room holding Buddy's food bowl. She freezes for a moment as she senses him sitting up, head shooting off the pillow, eyes wide awake. "Well, if it isn't the hypochondriac," she says, her face brightening with relief and joy. Buddy's ears perk up when he hears her voice. His tail doesn't wag feebly this time. It has a steady beat. It's the tiniest gesture, but it means everything. Dr. Carter comes in behind Emily, softly smiling. "I told you he just needed a little time," he says, crouching beside Buddy. He sweetly checks Buddy's vital signs, approving nods all around. His heart is strong, breathing is steady. Whatever it was that knocked him down, he's already pushing through it. Emily sets the food bowl on the ground. "You must be starving," she says with a laugh. "Come on, Buddy. You've got to get that comeback to come back." Buddy leans in, sniffing at the bowl. His appetite is giving at first, but then he's eating with gusto, a sure sign he's ready to meet the day. And as he says this, Emily gazes at him with a soft smile, wiping at the corner of her eye for a tear. "You never cease to amaze me," she whispers. When he's done, Buddy gets to his feet and stretches, his body recovering strength with each movement. He catches Emily's eye, and in that exchange, a silence, the kind that says everything, occurs between them. A bond deeper than words, a promise of hope for the future. "I think someone's ready for a walk," Dr. Carter says, smiling. Emily picks up Buddy's leash, her chest swelling with pride. "Let's go, hero," she whispers. "Let's see how much you can accomplish today." The road lies ahead of him, wide and promising. This time, it's not overwhelming. It seems like a fresh start. Buddy takes a step, strides a step. His legs are powerful and graceful. Max bounds ahead, barking happily as he encourages Buddy to follow. And Buddy does, not tentatively, but deliberately. Emily stares in awe as her chest begins to swell. "Look at him," she says, just above a whisper. Dr. Carter nods, training his eyes on Buddy. "He has no longer just been surviving," he says quietly. "He's living." Buddy's stride becomes more powerful, moving faster. The wind gusts and howls furiously past him, uplifting his spirit, whisking away every sparkle of fear and doubt. This isn't just another walk. It's a statement of intent that he's not going anywhere. They say healing is a journey, one that is full of twists and turns, highs and lows. But at the end of that road, there's beauty, strength you never knew was in you. Emily sinks down next to Buddy and embraces him. "You're a miracle," she says gently, "and we're just getting started." Dr. Carter laughs, his eyes sparkling with pride. "The best part is yet to come," he says. "The toughest battles are fought in the deepest valley, and sometimes they bear the brightest flower. They say all roads lead to where you least expect. Sometimes those places are challenges, and other times they're right where you were meant to be." Emily approaches Buddy with a ball in her hand, her face alight with excitement. "Okay, Buddy," she says, grinning. "We've mastered short walks. Now let's see how you do." Dr. Carter joins her, arms folded as he cranes to see him. "He's ready," Dr. Carter says, smiling. "Let's see what he can do." "You're in," she chuckles, throwing the ball a little further than normal and seeing it roll a few yards. "Go get it," she shouts, and immediately her voice is encouraging. Buddy pauses, gazing down at the ball, farther than he's used to, but fear is nowhere to be found in his eyes, replaced instead with focus. Then he bolts, bursting with energy. He walks with a confident, deliberate stride, legs moving with power and precision. Max races alongside him, barking with joy. Facing off against him are two opponents, and the two of them sprint towards the ball, their bodies perfectly synchronized. Emily watches Buddy in awe, holding her breath. "He's faster," she says, almost whispering. Dr. Carter is wide-eyed and nods. "Not just faster, stronger," he responds. Buddy gets to the ball but comes to a sliding stop. The man is breathing hard and his chest is heaving, but he is drilling furiously. He takes the ball in his mouth, spinning back toward Emily with a triumphant glint in his eye. He's not only keeping pace anymore, he's leading. Emily claps her hands, laughter bubbling to the surface. "You're amazing," she calls out. "Bring it back, Buddy." Buddy ambles back towards her, strutting with light, easy steps. There is pure joy in every single one of his movements, raw, unfiltered happiness. When he gets to her, he drops the ball at her feet and looks up at her, eyes shining. "You're unstoppable," Emily says quietly, bending to wrap him in her arms. "There's no stopping you now." Dr. Carter approaches, his face contemplative yet proud. "He's gone past redemption," he says. "This is a whole other ballgame. He's thriving." Emily nods, brushing a tear from her cheek. "He's not only a survivor," she says. "He's a champion." Rehabilitation is not simply restoring what was lost. It's about finding something new, something out of control, something indescribable. Buddy must bark once, loudly and clearly, as if to announce his conquest to the world. Max barks back, and they both trot off into the yard again, full of movement, life, energy. Emily stands and watches them with a gentle smile. "He's ready for a bit more," she says. Dr. Carter chuckles. "I guess we'd better keep up," he responds. "And sometimes the best journeys lead you right where you belong." But didn't see coming. They say that every journey has its moment of clarity. A moment when you realize you've become more than you ever thought you could be. For Buddy, that time was now. Emily is next to him with a gentle but not tight grasp on his leash. "This is a special day, Buddy," she whispers. "We're no longer just walking around. We are going to run, really run," Dr. Carter observes from afar, a knowing smile on his face. "If anyone's prepared for this, it's him," he says softly. Emily breathes heavily, unbuckling Buddy's leash. "Go on, Buddy," she says in a steady voice but with feeling. "Show us what you can do." Buddy pauses for a second, still and staring at the horizon. Ahead lies an open field that seems wide, infinite. But this year, there is no hesitation. Exerting a Herculean effort, Buddy ejects himself forward. His legs beat out a perfect rhythm, each stride long and strong. The wind whips around him, sweeping away any shred of doubt. He's not merely running, he's soaring. "Go, Buddy!" Her heart races with glee. Emily cheers. Dr. Carter shakes his head incredulous. "Look how he's going," he says, a tone of awe in his voice. "He's quicker than I've ever seen him." Buddy gallops across the field, his paws almost skimming the ground. His eyes are bright with delight, his body vibrating with an energy he didn't know he possessed. Max runs after him, barking with glee, but even Max can hardly keep pace. "He's a rocket!" Emily bursts into laughter, her voice bouncing across the expanse of the field. "I can't believe he's going so fast." After covering the far end of the field, Buddy pivots and races back toward Emily. His breathing is steady, his muscles working with the confidence of an athlete in his prime. When he gets to her, he skids to a halt, his chest puffing, but his tail wagging furiously. His gaze meets hers, beaming with pride and exhilaration. Emily folds down to him, and kisses him and hugs him. "You did it," she says, her voice heavy with emotion. "You really did it." Dr. Carter comes over and puts a hand on Buddy's back. "That was amazing," he says, eyes aglow. He's not only powerful, he's unrelenting. And now tears begin streaming down Emily's face as she nods. "He's a miracle," she says in a hush. They say true strength is not how fast you can run or how far you can go. It's the courage to make that first move, and the resolve to keep moving forward, despite everything. Emily runs her fingers down Buddy's fur. "It's your world now," she says. "Follow wherever your heart leads. Of course, sometimes the tougher the journey, the prettiest the destination. They say life is full of surprises. Some of them gentle reminders of how far you've come. Others, unexpected tests that push you to your limits once again." This was one of those moments. Buddy lifts his head, his ears twitching. He hears it again, a distant bark, high-pitched and frantic. His eyes sharpen with focus, his body tensing. "What is it, Buddy?" Emily asks, noticing his sudden alertness. Buddy rises to his feet, his gaze fixed on the far side of the yard. Without waiting, he takes off, his legs moving with urgency. "Buddy, wait!" Emily calls after him, quickly running to follow. Dr. Carter steps out of the clinic, his brow furrowed. "What's going on?" he asks. "I don't know," Emily responds breathless. "He heard something. He's leading us." Buddy sprints toward the edge of the property, where the tall grass sways gently in the wind. His nose twitches, his eyes scanning the area until he finds it, a small, frightened puppy caught in the underbrush. The puppy struggles, its tiny body trembling with fear. Buddy moves closer, his presence calm and steady. He lowers his head, gently nudging the puppy's side. "Oh no," Emily whispers, her heart breaking at the sight. "How did he get all the way out here?" The puppy whimpers, its eyes wide with fear. But Buddy doesn't back away. He stays close, his calm demeanor reassuring the little one. "It's okay," Emily whispers, crouching next to them. "You're safe now." Dr. Carter kneels down carefully, lifting the puppy into his arms. "He's a little dehydrated, but he'll be fine," he says, smiling at Buddy. "Thanks to you, hero." Buddy stands tall, his eyes never leaving the puppy. There's something almost protective in his stance, a quiet promise that no harm will come to the little one as long as he's there. Emily strokes Buddy's head gently. "You knew exactly what to do," she says, her voice filled with awe. "You've become more than a survivor, Buddy. You're a guardian now. They say the strongest souls are forged in the fires of adversity, and those who rise from the ashes often become protectors for others." Dr. Carter looks at the puppy, then at Buddy. "Looks like you've got yourself a new friend," he says with a chuckle. Emily nods, her eyes misting with tears. "Maybe Buddy was always meant to lead others," she says softly, "to show them the way, just like we showed him." The puppy snuggles deeper into Dr. Carter's arms, its tiny body finally relaxing. Buddy watches quietly, his tail wagging once, a simple but powerful acknowledgement. Sometimes the greatest purpose comes from helping others find their way. Every journey has an end, yet at times it's the end to something beautiful before it becomes the beginning of something even more beautiful. Emily ascends the hill in slow, deliberate steps. She kneels next to Buddy and places her palm on his head. "Hello there, hero," she says with a gentle smile. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Buddy leans against her touch, his eyes placid, so understanding. "Claire, all of this to say, I still remember the day we found you. You were tired, broken, and hanging by a thread. But look at you now. Look how far you've come." Dr. Carter observes from a few feet away, taking in the scene with quiet pride. He isn't just a survivor, he says, sounding warm. He's an inspiration. Emily nods, tears pooling in her eyes. I think you taught us all something, buddy, she says. You showed us that at any moment when life gets hard, there's always a way back. There's always hope. Buddy's tail slowly wags as though in agreement. He looks over at the puppy, who stirs sleepily and moves in tighter against him. It's a subtle, powerful moment, a circle of trust and protection, a suggestion that Buddy's journey was never simply about his own survival. It was about building something larger, a family. You've become something better than just a fighter, Emily whispers. And in that journey, you've become a leader, a protector, a friend to so many. Dr. Carter laughs, moving in closer. But I believe it's the best part that is still to come, he says, because Buddy's story is just beginning. Sometimes the most grand journeys start from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the greatest heroes don't wear capes, only wagging tails and big hearts. Emily rises, still holding Buddy's head with her hand. Oh, come on, Buddy, she says gently. Let's go home. Buddy gets to his feet, his gait strong and graceful. He glances back at the yard, then turns to Emily, prepared for whatever follows. Max barks, running ahead, and the puppy gallops behind with small, deliberate steps. Buddy takes one last glance at the sinking sun, eyes full of quiet gratitude, then follows them over the hill. In the end, the ending of one story is often the beginning of another.